Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Get ready to expand your intuition, connect to God, experience deeper relationships, open your heart and feel more joy, and finally end the chaos in your life. Are you ready to get unstuck and more? You ask, how do I do it? The answer is simple. The time has come for peak spiritual fitness. It starts right now on Spirituality Bootcamp with your host, Kristen White.
And I'm finally on the call. I love the technology of Skype. And so to all of you who have joined us tonight, thank you so much. We are in the 6th of our series here on Spirituality Bootcamp, the 7 Principles of Spiritual Practice. And our guests today, I am just so thrilled to have them with us. They have written a book with Paul McCartney, Yoko Ono, Richard Gere, and the Dalai Lama. So they are really leaders in the field of quieting the mind and just how important it is to be in that space. Without further hesitation, I'd love to welcome Ed and Deb Shapiro to help teach us how to really be the change and transform ourselves and the world through silencing that voice within. So thank you for joining us here on the show.
It's our joy, and I just want you to say you are a radiant light. It's so beautiful that you can host something like this and to serve so many people. You know what they say where I grew up? It's good karma.
I love that.
Hi,
Deb.
It's
really. Hi, Deb. Thank you so much.
Hi,
and you know what's interesting is I think that the universe has this great sense of humor. And so they wanted us to start with a little pause of silence before we started the series.
Well, you know what the definition of perfection is? Perfection is your ability to accept your imperfections.
I love
Everybody
that.
wants to be perfect. I meditate. I'm going to be perfect. Everything's good. Well, there's no such thing, you know what I mean? I mean, if God wanted this world to be perfect, why did he create the mango, the most delicious fruit, and the pit is bigger than the fruit?
You know, that's really a great point, Ed. You know, it's interesting. I know that for myself, when I first started meditating, I didn't even really know what that meant. I just knew that if our thoughts attract our reality, what am I thinking about? And that I need to clear out those thoughts. So that was really the motivation that got me started into a meditative practice. But in the beginning, I have to admit, it was interesting learning how busy my mind was and how much conversation existed there that I hadn't noticed lived inside that mind.
I think that's one of the things that happen when we finally get to be quiet, when we just stop and get still, and we discover this mind that's making so much noise, and we think, oh my goodness, you know, this is awful. But the truth is, our mind is like that all the time. We just don't realize it because we haven't stopped and we haven't been still. And so suddenly we're sitting there wanting to be quiet, and the mind is just like a drunken monkey, just going chatter, chatter, chatter. And so people give up very quickly. They think they can't do it. They think they can't meditate because their mind is going so quickly. And the truth is, once you begin to slow down, once you begin to just focus on your breathing, it begins to quieten down. It's like giving the monkey a banana. It finally just stops and sits down and gets quiet.
But the important thing is actually, why do we do this? Why should we just sit there, especially teenagers, especially young people? Why should I want to look at my mind? I mean, it's bad enough some of the thoughts that go through it. But why sit there? So to begin with, I do want to say the greatest gift you can give yourself, more than anything in this world, is meditation. Because what you're really tuning into is all that wonder, you know. It's sort of like Deb came up with this great title we did in Thailand when we did this amazing workshop. Remember, Deb? You know, Beyond the Ferrari. What happens when you have it all and you're still not happy?
We were working with a whole bunch of CEOs, and we're very surprised to find that they not only loved stopping and being still and quiet, but they actually wanted to do more than was on the program, because we were just filling in between business meetings. And they actually, on their day off, wanted to come and practice.
And so, but the important thing that Deb brought out, which is very important, is you don't try to control the mind. You know, if you have these wacky thoughts, you know, 1 minute you're happy, the next minute you want to just punch the moon, you know, aggravation. You see, you don't want to try to stop it, but through meditation, you can be with it without it disturbing you. So you don't have this mind that's, you know, like, oh, it's quiet, because trying to control the mind, you know, people think, I can't control the mind, but trying to control the mind is like trying to catch the wind. Impossible. But through awareness, through meditation, through what we're going to share with you, and the joy of being with you, you know, you bring a lot of joy to me, Kristen, and that's the way it is. You have a wonderful way about you, and it's amazing. You have a name like White, so you're like White. You're not just Kristen, you're White Kristen. And I mean white meaning the light. I mean the sun. Because that's within all of us. And as Deb said, the reason why it's confusing is our monkey mind. We get caught up in this monkey. Some people compare it to a drunken monkey bitten by a scorpion. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a very challenging thing. But as we can relax, and then through meditation, we can enter into this beauty.
So tell me, Kristen, when you started meditating, how long did it take you to settle into it?
You know, it's interesting. I think that when I started, I used some tools. So I used a process called japa, where I took the framework of the Lord's Prayer, and then in between the spaces, I did a series of ohms. And so what I started to do is just use almost just that as a stepping stone to just have a focused thought inside my mind. I have a very active mind. My background is as a reporter and a journalist. So it helped me to go from, you know, some thoughts that were random to one organized, focused thought. And then I found that I was calm enough afterwards to then just hold the space of emptiness. And then I would sit there inside that darkness after my practice of ohms, and I would start to observe in that space. And so I started with a system, and then it expanded from there. But I will tell you that time of stillness was very powerful for me in my life. You know, in the course of a year, I lost 50 pounds. All my intuitive channels opened up, and I wrote a book. So I found that I did more sitting still inside that gift of meditation than in all the decades before where I was extremely busy. Now, I didn't start for that reason, but that was probably the primary benefit.
Well, that's what's so beautiful, because what you're saying is that, you know, the mind is a perfect servant, but a terrible master. And when you do what you were saying, what you were sharing, what you just brought up, is exactly what happens. As you become familiar with that emptiness, it's like radiant emptiness. As you become familiar with that quiet, then you naturally sink into that. And then you could see, like, the thoughts are like clouds, like birds in the sky of your mind. The thoughts, the dramas just fly away. But when you do begin, I want to share this with you. It's so funny, because when you begin, I think we were in Europe, in England, and I met this lovely lady, and she just said to me, she said, you know, can you help me? I really want to meditate. I says, well, when you meditate, sometimes when you sit down, some of the worst thoughts can come to your mind. Really, some awful thoughts, they just come up first. You could even have a thought like you want to kill your mother. And she said, how'd you know?
Well, you know, it is interesting. When I first started my spiritual practice, and that's what this whole series, Spirituality Bootcamp, is based upon, is that the thoughts that came up initially were not pleasant. You know, I spent a lot of time crying. You know, there were things going on in my life at the time that I thought, oh, you know, maybe I've been victimized by this situation, or why has this happened to me? And I think that's really common when we are going through our life. We think, okay, am I participating, or, you know, am I receiving something? And it's not till we get into that larger perspective that we realize it's all part of, you know, a bigger picture, obviously, right? And so I think the initial part of the journey was just shedding all the little negative bubbles that came to the surface first. And then it got quieter and quieter and quieter. And so I really encourage anyone, as they're working with us on these principles, because we have thousands of listeners, to give yourself permission to commit to the discipline of a spiritual practice. Because when you first start it brings up your stuff because maybe you're listening to your inner self for the very first time.
I couldn't agree more, and it's actually that word, commit yourself. Commitment to me is stunning. It's beautiful because it takes out all the hesitation and doubt. You're just gonna do it, and though there's no room to now put everything other than that first, and it gives you that freedom to enter into the meditation, to enter into whatever practice you're doing, and to give yourself the time to experience it. It's not going to happen at once. I mean, in Japan, it can take 12 years just to learn how to arrange flowers. Mm-hmm. And we expect our minds, after 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of chattering away, to just suddenly be still.
And also, you might say, be master of your mind. I remember one of my yoga masters who opened the Woodstock Festival, and he was Swami Satchidananda. And his whole attitude is that you make friends with your mind. You become familiar with what's going on inside of you, and you do this practice. You become good at it, but at the same time, it becomes your friend, and the practice becomes your friend. And so, therefore, whatever arises is okay.
I think even more is why one of my teachers said, there is as many forms of meditation as there are people who do it. In other words, there's no right or wrong. You can't not do it, get it wrong, be unable to do it, because it's not a thing that has to be done in a specific way. It's up to each individual to just find what works for them. And so there's no right or wrong. And that's really important. So many people say to us, I can't do it. But actually, you can. Everybody can.
Well, just what you're saying, the best thing I can read is we wrote a book called Be the Change, How Meditation Can Transform You and the World. And the Dalai Lama wrote the foreword. Robert Thurman, whom his daddy wrote the foreword with him, Jane Fonda, John Kabat-Zinn. And the Dalai Lama wrote this in our book, which you'll all love, and it's adorable. In this book, Be the Change, Ed and Deb Shapiro have gathered together the thoughts and reflections of a wide range of people with a variety of experiences in meditation. Anyone interested in meditation should not only read what these people have to say, but also try it out. If you like their suggestions and they are helpful to you, use them. If they aren't, disregard them. Treat this book as you would a cookery book. You wouldn't merely read recipes with approval. You'd try them out. Some you'd like and would use again. Like cookery, meditation only makes sense if you put it into practice.
Thank you so much for that, because I think that is such an amazing point that you just mentioned, Ed, and Deb as well, that we need to give ourselves permission to be a beginner. In this society, we're so achievement-driven. We even want to be successful at our meditations. We want to be successful in our businesses. We want to be successful in our relationships. We want to be successful in our spiritual practice. We're very results-oriented. And I think when you move away from that focus that we have to get a result from this daily practice, this exercise that we do, and we just relax into the delicious nature of it, that it takes on a higher quality for us. It becomes a time that we just relax into ourselves, that we feed ourselves. I found for myself personally, I have 3 children, and it was very noisy in my home, so it was helpful for me to set up my alarm where I would be able to get up before them. And I would just kind of get out of bed and walk down the hall to my sacred space, this big cozy chair I had set up, and I would just do my meditation to start my day. And so it was a really special time for me that I began to really look forward to, because it became that space where I would feed myself every day. And I didn't have any results in mind at all, other than just to be in that moment of stillness for at least a part of my very busy and chaotic day at the time.
That's stunning. That's stunning.
Yeah.
I'm impressed by that, because again, so many people say to us, oh, I just don't have time. And you think about all those little spaces in your day, even if it's before everyone gets up or after everyone's gone to sleep, or even when you're sitting in the bathroom, you're on your own. Take a moment to just breathe and be still. That's all that's needed.
Yeah, but Deb actually says something that's very important for people who are listening. And what it really is that, it's that the mind, it's sort of a hired hand. The ego is a hired hand. It would become redundant. So meditation, it's telling your mind, enough, bastante. Just be quiet. It's like your mind is like a naughty child. And you have to love that naughty child, but you also have to say, okay, relax, be calm. And then you become more, the mind, you're in charge of the mind. The mind is not in charge of you.
I think the really important thing here that is, people say, well, I haven't got time, not realizing, as you did, Kristen, that giving yourself that little space actually means you are a much nicer person, you're calmer, you're more able to cope with difficulties, you're more able to cope with all the things you have to do. And so actually just taking even 20 minutes to yourself gives you greater space, much greater space. And still,
there are so many benefits to meditation, and we are going to cover all of that and step by step how you can get started with your own meditation practice, even if you've never done it before. But today our guests are Ed and Deb Shapiro. They are incredible spiritual teachers, authors of the book Be the Change, How Meditation Can Transform You and the World. And you are listening to Spirituality Bootcamp here on VividLife Radio as part of VividLife University. We were just talking about how important it is even just to have a meditation practice, even to keep our relationships in balance and things to, feel like they're in the flow.
And that's really true. I mean, it's very important. I can say this to anybody. I was explaining how I can't truly believe how anybody could have, Deb and I are married 26 years. I can't imagine anybody having a long relationship. I'll put it to you this way. Deb and I were in India on our honeymoon, and we had a private audience with the Dalai Lama. So there's Deb, the Dalai Lama, and myself. We're in this room. He was with the Pope 2 days after he was with the Pope and the heads of all religions. And I just couldn't believe how beautiful it was going. And halfway through our beautiful meeting, it was about 30 minutes, I said, Your Holiness, Dalai Lama, I said, I don't want to leave. I really don't want to leave. It was so beautiful being with this person. And he looked at me, and I thought he would appreciate the wisdom and the wonder of what I said. And he looked at me and said, If we were together all the time, we would quarrel.
You've got to put his accent on, honey. Ooh, if we were together all the time, we would quarrel.
And I suddenly realized how important meditation is, because it's so easy when you're together with somebody. Like if Deb and I are together and we look at a ceiling and I say it's flat and she says it's white. We're both right. And no, it's white. No, it's flat. The things two people can get to. So whenever that comes up, Deb and I can stop for a moment. Just breathe. We meditate together so that we have the ability when our egos, when our minds, when our all the horror that comes up and through life, the goodness, the badness, that we can just stop and make friends with our world. Because that's what you're doing in meditation. You're making friends with your life, your own life, and with other people. When people can say something hurtful to you, when things happen, you can allow that person. I mean, one of our dear people, Byron Katie, said, if someone's yelling at you, let them yell. It makes them happy. In that way, meditation is that kind of a thing that gives you the ability to let people be themselves without it freaking you out or getting you upset.
Ed, you raised such an incredible point. I just want to thank you for that and highlight it, that I think that during meditation, not only do we make friends with other people, but we make friends with the other aspects of ourselves. And at least for myself, when I did that meditative practice, when I started, I was really only aware of one aspect of myself. I was a mother, I was a wife, I had certain aspects of myself. And then as I spent more and more time inside that stillness, I found that there were greater possibilities that started to open up to me. I mean, possibilities beyond what I would have ever considered. You know, I'm sure as spiritual teachers and transformational thought leaders, you know, you've heard that we're really only using, 3% or 5% of our potential. And I think that the biggest gift that meditation has given for me is the ability to access that expanded possibility of myself. And then to have the courage and the presence and the peace of mind to say, I wonder what would happen if I took a few steps today in that direction. You know, instead of like making some big quantum leap or saying I'm going to make this profound change, I would meditate in the morning and then act upon intuitive prompts throughout each day. And that was the combination that has led me on just an incredible transformational journey myself. You know, I've studied with a Tibetan monk. I ended up going down to, I'm a medium of the Casa of John of God. I mean, I'm a Midwestern housewife, okay? These weren't things on my bucket list, all right?
Oh, it sounds just like you're going to Costco's.
Yeah, exactly. But the meditation inside that structure, and it really was a structure for me, things would come up, not always in the meditation, but throughout the day. And I would say, you know what, that kind of feels interesting, or that feels right. And so I would just follow it without judgment. And it really led me down. And it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And it gives you that spaciousness. You know, we write for Oprah. We write her website. We've been writing for her a long time. And we write different stories in the Huffington Post. We write for the Healthy Living section and over with Ariana Huffington. She invited us. And then, of course, the best of all, we write for VividLife with our dear producer, who's a brilliant genius, your partner, Shane Travis.
Yes.
And his partner, Tim. And just so many good things we do. And what it amounts to, and we have our own radio show, Going Out of Your Mind. And so this is all through meditation. I lived and trained in India to do this. And what happens is, with all this happening, we come up with things like one particular article, blog we wrote, saying no is saying yes to yourself. And that's a very hard thing to do all the time. And meditation gives you the confidence of accepting yourself, of being with yourself, of saying yes to yourself. Because unless we say yes to ourselves, then we are in a difficult place. And what meditation says is your peace. Peace is who you are. You should never compromise your peace, whether it be your wife, husband, children, friends. Your peace is the only way you can be in this world. And through meditation, you really center yourself in this peace. It becomes who you are and your best friend. And when this happens, you really are enjoying life.
You know, I think that is just incredibly profound, Ed, and that when you do go through these challenges, because life will present these challenges, if you're able to look at it from that perspective of peace, you can sometimes see that perhaps it's just reorganizing itself so that it can reconstruct at a higher form. And that has been probably the biggest lesson, that one of, acceptance and also releasing that expectation of whatever I think it needs to look like. And that's where meditation, more than any of the other principles that we've talked about, we've talked about sacred space, which I do think helps, create getting into that meditative state quickly. But, gratitude, forgiveness, visualization, affirmation, all of those things are incredible, powerful principles. But meditation is that cornerstone. It is the table that we set the whole banquet on. And it is just my absolute favorite thing. And I will tell you that I know there are a lot of beginners out there, and they're listening to what we're saying, and you're all excited and giddy about it, but they're wondering, God, I've heard about it, I think about it, how do I get started? What would you say?
You get cooking with the Dalai Lama, you take a cookery class called meditation.
I started meditating when I was 15. I know I'm not normal, but my mother was going on a meditation retreat, and all my older siblings had gone away, and she just said, this is it, you're coming with me, I'm not leaving you in London on your own. And I knew some of the people who'd be there, so I reluctantly said, okay. And she said, I'm only going for 3 days. So I said, okay. And the truth is, I stayed for 10. She left after 3, but I stayed for 10 because I don't think I understood a word of what was being said, but in that meditation space, I just entered into a wonderful experience. And I probably became addicted to it at that time, if you can apply addiction to meditation, but I never wanted to not meditate. It felt absolutely normal to me. It felt like, yes. And I think if the listeners can just give themselves that chance to be still and to be just quiet within themselves, they will begin to touch in on that. It may take a little while because our minds are so busy in this day and age. When I was 15, it was a lot quieter than it is now, and I wasn't working quite so hard. But it really comes naturally to us because it is who we really are. We will teach, a couple of different practices. We will teach everything everybody needs to know in how to create a practice, how to, do it in your day and answer your questions about it. But the truth is, all you really need to do is just sit and be still, and it will come to you.
And it's important to realize it's not like you change, you become a different person and everything, because basically what it is you deepen your sense of yourself. You really do. So when things arise, you have the confidence and the wisdom and the compassion to deal with it. You become a nicer person. When someone's angry or pissed off at you or anything, you don't have to retaliate and be a nasty person. You can see that person must be suffering. No one can create suffering and be at peace. And we all go through our moments. And so one of the things, we're teaching a course in Ireland. We were on retreat. And we were teaching this class in a retreat. Everybody's staying. So they're living with us in this beautiful place called Chrysalis outside of Dublin. And then Deb and I had a break, and we were going into town. And we got outside, and we're looking for the bus stop. And I said it was to the right, and Deb said it was to the left. And we started bickering. No, it's over here. And then one of the people in the group, in the retreat, saw us going at each other like, here, and this way. And she ran back into the group, and she started screaming, they're normal. And it was so funny because what I was getting to is that you're always yourself. It's not like you're going to wind up with someone else. The sense of it is you deepen yourself, but you can deal with whatever arises better. If you get upset, so you get upset. It's not a big deal. You get angry, so you might get angry. It's sort of like the monk, this disciple, this young disciple, his Buddha-like, his enlightened master. He's going to be seeing him. And the enlightened master comes to town. His son had died. And at that moment, the student is with his teacher, and the teacher cries. And the student says, Master, teacher, you're enlightened. You're like a Buddha. You're an enlightened teacher. Why are you crying? And he said, my son died.
So, in other words, we're still human beings. Whoever meditates still has everything that every human has the feeling.
You don't have to be afraid that if I meditate. I mean, Deb's story is even better when someone said to when Chimay Rinpoche said.
Oh, this is wonderful. When I was in my early days meditating with my teacher, and someone else in the class said, I don't want to keep meditating. And so Jimmy, the teacher, said, well, why not? And he said, because if I keep meditating, I'm going to stop wanting things, which made our teacher just roar with laughter. And he said, it's not quite like that. He said, I still want things. I still want to be with my wife. I still want to have clothes to wear. I still want to have food to eat. I still want a bed to sleep in.
I still want a house and a big car.
Maybe it's a medium car. But the difference is, if I don't get them, it doesn't matter. And
they won't disturb my mind.
Exactly. That's the beauty meditation gives us. It's an inner freedom. We're not so attached to what has to be, what we think has to be. We can actually let go and allow things to be as they are.
You learn to realize that you can have things, but things can't have you. If things have you, you're really a slave. If you have things, it's fine. So meditation deepens your sense of being a human being, a caring human being. And this course that we're doing, this wonderful course with amazing people, just to be with Kristen and Shane and this university is a blessing for us that we can share this with you. And one of the things is, whatever we say is what we've experienced. We're not saying Ed and Deb know it all, Ed and Deb have it together. No, it's not true. We share with you what we know. If you enjoy it, if it feels right, then it might be something you want to learn more about. But we're not sitting there saying we know more than everybody else, because you know something? Anybody that says that is confused.
Absolutely, and I agree with that
wholeheartedly. We're just ordinary people.
It's interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Deb.
No, I was just going to say we had we were giving a program once in South England, and somebody came up afterwards and said, "Oh, that was very interesting. That was very good." He said, "But of course, I've been meditating a long time, and I've gone on to more advanced practices now." And it made me roar with laughter, because the truth is there are no advanced practices. How can you get more advanced than just being still?
Well, you raised a really valid point, and I wanted to go here next, is, there's a lot of people out there that are like, I meditated for 1 hour or 3 hours or 5 hours or all day. And at some point, to me, what I hear is avoidance. It's like you can very efficiently meditate and have that deep spiritual listening in 20 minutes. It doesn't become more effective if you do it for 10 hours. And that I think that inside this whole concept of spiritual practice and spiritual principles, there is a balance here. There is an alignment of holding space within and expressing without. Because we are, we raised our hands to live and exist on this planet.
Nicely put. I think more importantly is that meditation becomes a part of your everyday life. It's not a separate thing. Maybe to begin with, we need the formality of sitting purposefully and doing it for 10, 15, 20 minutes, however long we've got. But after a while, we begin to realize that it's affecting every part of our life, every second. It's not separate to us.
It's what Kristen said that's so important. It's delicious.
Yes, that's beautiful. I love the word with meditation, delicious.
Absolutely. It's another part of meditation. When I first started doing it, I went through a period, and this was not frequent, but there were times inside that meditation where I had a distinct feeling that I had entered another dimension. And it was not all the time. It would be like maybe once a month, or, another time where I would have a really deep connection with my higher self, or another aspect, or even a vision. At one point I had this vision where I was walking on this pathway, and it was all diamonds. And then in front of me was this beautiful golden crystal castle. And so I walked inside, and there was a table set before me. It was very visual. And then I ended up going into a room, and there was this beautiful, glowing, loving energy. And I called it my beloved, and the energy called it me, my child. Okay, so this was just totally my own vision that I had inside this meditation. I had it a couple of times. And about a couple weeks later, I was at a bookstore, and I started reading a book. I just opened it up. And this is part of my whole thing. I called it self-university. I'd just go over to the bookstore and say, what do I need to read today? And I'd just be guided to something. So I opened this book, and it turned to a page about the mystic Teresa de Avila. And I was not familiar with her at the time, but she talked about in her meditations going into the crystal castle and connecting with God. And God Force called her my child, and she called it my beloved. And so in that moment I thought, I think it's possible for all of us to connect to these strands of multidimensional energy where we can channel through our quietness guidance. Like that was just a place. It was almost like I was just traveling on this galactic interstate in my meditation, and I just went to this place that other people have crossed through. Can you speak to that?
Well, it's very interesting. In the there's Dzogchen in Buddhism and Advaita in yoga, and I trained in India, and I became a Swami, which is sort of like, in Western terms, you might say, one who knows himself. Definition of Swami. Swami is one who's self-awakened, and I was trained and I was initiated in that. And what it is in the Advaita is that you learn that you're not the doer. You see, basically, we identify with our ego. We identify with the me. Kristen, Shane, Tim, Ed, Deb. We identify with this solid kind of self. I'm this body, or I'm this mind. And essentially, when we wake up through meditation, we enter into the core, into the realization of who we are. Then just like a flower that blooms, just like this earth right now that's in orbit, just like the seasons change, we're tuned into this magnificence, this eloquence, this life. So when we let go of the solid self, we realize that there's something more powerful than us. Some use the word God, some universe. Basically, they're all words. God really is a word that we're giving to some consciousness, some force, something that is bigger than our normal little selves, you might say. So when that happens, when we open up to the beauty of this exquisite universe, then different things happen, and we experience things in different ways. So as I said, it's sort of like there's an inner guide, the inner guru. Guru means guru, the remover of ignorance. That's what a guru really is. It's not a person who's pushing you around or telling you what to do or giving you this or giving you that. It's just when the true nature, and it reveals itself through meditation, you get clearer and clearer to see how oneness is. We're all connected. There's one consciousness, and it's just like the sea. There's one ocean, and then you dip into the ocean. So when you go into a deeper state of samadhi or nirvana, and you're experiencing this incredible joy, this incredible bliss, ananda, when you enter into that, then you might, what's necessary for you, something that was helpful to you, this beautiful being called Kristen, this was something that somehow was personally meant for you to know. This is a connection that you had. Each individual has their way into that oneness. Ultimately, everything dissolves. Ultimately, there's only oneness. And when we dip into that, we experience complete self-realization. We realize that this self, this Ed, this Deb, this Kristen, Shane, Tim, we realize that this isn't who we are. But we function in this world through this body-mind. We function in this world in a way so that we can deal with this world because it's relative reality. You can't be living in nirvana and go into this deep state. In yoga, it's called nirvikalpa samadhi, where there's no sense of me, but there's total awareness. So that's freedom. That's the freedom we have. So many different experiences we have, whether it's on the psychic plane or the astral plane. There's different higher planes, but essentially, when the mind is free, when we're totally free, it's sort of like what we really experience is when you go and an actor is in a play and is on stage, and the actor knows they have to cry, and there's a big audience out there. If the actor doesn't cry, then the audience will walk out. So the actor cries, but he knows he's acting. In the same way, through self-realization, when we wake up to the beauty, the exquisiteness of who we are, the joy, the happiness, the peace, the wonder of what it is to be a true, awake human being, then we live in this world, and hopefully, as the Dalai Lama does, and other people, by serving, by being good human beings, by helping others, we want to be in this world to do good, to be good, and to do good. So this experience for you is sacred to you. This experience to you, Kristen, is what's giving you more understanding of being this beautiful person who, through you, through Shane, has created this very important university.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Ed and Deb. And one of the things we were talking about is not only just the benefits and that experience of oneness that comes from meditation, but we also have created for all of you this amazing advanced class that Ed and Deb Shapiro have agreed to share with you, all of their wisdom and experience. They've been teaching meditation for over 25 years. This is for housewives to corporations and everyone in between. So, Deb, if you don't mind, will you just talk to us a little bit about what you have in store for, the exclusive group that will be joining you in the advanced class?
And let me, I'm interested in that word advanced because realistically, meditation is just meditation. It's just that stillness. And so, advanced maybe because you're going to be doing it with us, and we've been doing it for years. But in reality, if you're a beginner, that's as great as if you've been
Yeah, but you could always, this is America. When we say advanced, we mean even if you take one foot in front of the other, it could be the next step.
That is your next step, definitely. So meditation is not what you think, and so week 1 is asking, well, if meditation isn't what you think, then what is it? And we'll look at reasons why you should meditate and what it really means to clear your mind, because obviously all of you coming to a class like this is going to be coming with a busy mind and wondering how to make it quieter, and we're going to be working with that. And in the first class, we're going to be doing mindfulness meditation, which is really about watching your breath and being with a breath awareness. But most important is no appointments, no disappointments. We love that phrase, no appointments, no disappointments.
And you'll learn more about that.
Exactly. So don't come thinking you're going to have, all these wonderful answers to everything. You're just going to be with what is.
And you're going to be with Deb's beautiful voice.
And Ed's. And in week 2, we call it Making Friends with Yourself and Your Chattering Monkey. So we've talked about the monkey a bit tonight and how it can sometimes seem like a drunken monkey bitten by a scorpion, and how to deal with that in meditation, how to cut through habitual patterns. Oh, excuse me. And we call it Discovering Basic Sanity, really discovering who you are within yourself. And we're going to be doing a witness meditation, which is really where we begin to develop this ability to just watch what is happening, as if there's 2 of us, but obviously there isn't. There's a part of you that is the witness.
And the beauty of that is that you don't completely fall trap into the dramas and the things that are going on. Quite often, your anger or something will come up and you think, I'm angry. How often do you hear someone say, I'm angry? I remember with my sister when she really lost it, when Deb and I came after a retreat, and she started acting a certain way, and she said, this is the way I am. And the funny part of it is we're not like that at all. But the mind grabs a hold of it, and it owns it, and then we become a slave to anger or fear. So we'll learn how to deal with these emotions, these feelings, and make friends with them. We don't have to become slaves.
And so these first 2 weeks are going to be predominantly about clearing the mind, really bringing the mind into a quiet space. And the second 2 weeks are more about opening the heart, because we have these 2 aspects to our being. We have the emotional and we have the mental, as it were. So we clear the mind, and then we come into the heart. So week 3 is happiness is an inside job.
Isn't that wonderful? Everybody thinks something out there in the world's going to make them happy. But it can't be, because no matter what it is outside in the world, if you lose it, you're not going to be happy. So happiness being an inside job, that's connecting with your inner happiness. Nothing could take that away.
And so in this week 3, we're going to be beginning to work on what's called loving kindness meditation. And we're not going to do it all. It's a long practice, so we're just going to do half of it in week 3. But it really starts with loving ourselves, which obviously can be the hardest bit of all, and near and dear loved ones. And it enables us to understand how to develop those qualities of compassion and unconditional love. And then in week 4, the only way out is within. We not only obviously round it all up with how to do a practice, how to sit, how to find that space within your own home, and how to make friends with yourself and your world. But we'll also continue the loving kindness meditation into a different aspect where we're actually embracing people we're having a hard time with.
And it's interesting, Kristen had mentioned to us before, during the break, and she brought up, she's brilliant, by the way. I just want you to know this lady is brilliant. But she brought up how it's so important to be upright, to sit. How is this? It's such a noble thing to just sit upright, whether you're in a chair, whether you're sitting cross-legged, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you begin and you have an upright respect and dignity for yourself. And that's the position of just sitting quietly.
So this is really for anyone who wants to enrich their lives, whose drunken monkey has a habit of running the show, and you long to just stop and be still. And come and join us to do this.
And you'll learn a beautiful story that Deb won't say now, but it's a beautiful story. But she does tell how the monkey will become your own student.
Oh, absolutely. It'll become your ally. So anyone seeking basic sanity and freedom, you will find it all in this simple practice of meditation. Just being with yourself.
And can you imagine, after all the years, Deb and I are doing it for 25 years together, but I and Deb had done it before we met each other. And the one thing through all this that we learn is to not take ourselves too seriously.
Never. You know, if you start taking yourself too seriously, you become very serious, and it's disastrous.
Life is too quick. But what you can do is you can have a good sense of humor.
You can have, and remember to laugh. It's so important, you know, when things are going tough or whatever, just take a moment to see the ridiculousness of your own mind.
I remember when Deb and I were in India, and we were traveling, and we got into a quarreling situation, and we saw her teacher, and we said, this is too much. You know, we've been married a short time, and I can't take it. You know, we're just not having fun. And he said, can't you just laugh?
So one of the things about meditation and doing this program is it will help you see yourself more clearly. You'll see where your ego suddenly starts taking over, or, you know, when you start demanding stuff that you don't need to demand. And you start getting into situations that actually create suffering. And it's not like you see it necessarily even in the meditation itself, but the awareness that develops in meditation comes into every part of your being and every part of your life.
Because you're opening yourself to a natural beauty that is inherently within you, within all of us. Even the Buddha said it the Buddhist way. We believe isms and wasms. But basically, there's beauty inside. There's Buddha nature. There's wisdom inside of us. And when we keep the monkey quiet, when we calm down, we see it. We see who we really are.
You know, Ed and Deb, your joy is so contagious. You know, I can just feel it bubbling out of you. And I will tell you that is very much, I believe, a signature of having a daily meditative practice. That there is this bubbly, effervescence, you know, champagne joyfulness that comes from having that practice inside your life. And to everyone who's listening, and, you know, I know that this course will definitely fill up very quickly, that not only are you learning how to recognize and express more joy, but what I believe is the opportunity here is to really go and excavate aspects of yourself that maybe are unactualized, or things that you want to bring forward. Perhaps you have a book within you that you've been trying to finish writing, or you want to get out to the world, or you want to, teach a class, or be a thought leader like the people that we have on this program. I mean, that's a lot of what VividLife attracts, that learning to use meditation as your friend and as your inspiration could be the very key, that golden key to unlock this great life purpose and potential that you've been holding on to that's just waiting to be expressed.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I feel so joyful right now that I can't believe it.
Bursting out of the phone.
How do I contain all this happiness?
The phones aren't big enough.
But yes, a sense of humor is so good.
Yeah. So I just want to thank you so much for being with us here and being a part of Spirituality Bootcamp, the 7 Principles of Spiritual Practice. And, of course, this is Principle 6. We're almost finished with our series. Next week we'll be talking about prayer. And so I love that topic as well. And I know every show is like, you always say you love this topic. Well, I do. I love them all. But I just want to thank you, both of you, for being so incredibly wonderful as guests and sharing with us all the fun insights and stories, and I'm really excited about the class.
There's many, many more stories to come.
Yeah, and there's so much happiness.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
And I hope we listen and have you all join us.
Absolutely.
And may your days be full of happiness, joy, and peace.
Yes, thank you, Ed and Deb Shapiro. And to all of you, thank you for joining us tonight. You have been listening to Spirituality Bootcamp here on VividLife University, and I'm your host, Kristen White, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.